everyone, I'm back with yet another episode of AI Chronicles. Now, I have a question for everyone. What do you get when you mix machine learning experimentation with real world scale? A need for serious workflows. So, today's episode, I am here with Nurjan from an engineering manager on the Metaflow team at Netflix to unpack why machine learning workflows matter, how Netflix builds for both research and production, and where it all fits in. Hi, Nurjan. How are you doing?
Doing well. Sonam, how are you?
I'm pretty good. Thank you. Thank you for coming and joining me here. It's my pleasure. And before we get into all the Metaflow and technical talk, I have one question. What's your favorite Turkish bakery in San Francisco?
I think when someone tells me Turkish bakery, I think of baklava, perhaps.
Yes, yes, exactly what I'm thinking.
That's what we have in San Francisco, an awesome bakery called Baklava Story.
Ooh.
I think it's on Harrison, but somewhere near Costco in San Francisco. It has an awesome chef, awesome ingredients. So I highly recommend everyone to check it out.
Awesome. You got it. Okay. Thank you so much for that recommendation. I generally don't eat baklava, but I've heard that, from people that, okay, this bakery or the one that you suggested might be a good one. So I'm going to check it out. Thank you so
Highly,
much.
highly recommend.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Now that, have fun stuff, let's start simple. Why do machine learning teams even need workflows?
So, Sonam, I guess we all know that like ML is not just one thing. It has data in very, very simple terms. It has data. You need to work with that data. You need to train a model. You need to deploy that model. You need to deploy that model various times.
Right.
So something needs to connect these dots, and what we call connecting those dots is an ML workflow.
Mm. That makes sense. And what kind of problems start showing up when you don't have one such workflow in place?
So I would say a couple of things, but the one that comes to my mind the first is the reproducibility. So when you say that you worked on a notebook, you have something that's running, and you need to somehow keep running it multiple times in order to, react to new data, and whatever new things that are happening. So when you don't have a workflow, organizing these multiple things become really challenging. So I think like from organizing your work perspective, workflows are really important. The other things we see like on a day-to-day life is, I would say, incident management, right? Like when you just run 7 different scripts in, some on your machine, some on an AWS environment, it
Mhm.
becomes really hard to respond to incidents, for example, that, you know something is wrong, but when was the last time you ran that particular training job, gets
Right.
really hard to pin down. One other, from my perspective, an underrated aspect of doing your ML within a workflow framework is
Mhm.
actually onboarding. So when new team members join, you need to like tell them this is what I'm doing, right?
Right. Right.
When everything is stitched together in a workflow, I think it becomes much easier to onboard an engineer to your team. And I guess the last thing is collaboration. Again, like when you need to collaborate with a product manager or with another team, you need to say that this is the structured way for me, that like I'm running all these things in this order, becomes very important. So I think these are the reasons that I can think of the importance of workflows.
Those are some really important problems to solve and quite challenging as well, especially the onboarding part. That's something that I have personally seen at my job as well. Can you walk us through what Metaflow is and how it fits into a typical ML life cycle? Maybe like, if you want, if you could use any Netflix use case as an example, that would work too.
Absolutely. So I think what we call Sonam, like in general, like if you go to Metaflow, search for Metaflow, we like to say Metaflow is a human-centric framework that makes it quick and easy to build and manage your AI ML projects. And what we are really proud with Metaflow is that we try to focus on taking the burden from ML engineers,
Okay.
where what matters to them and what are the things that actually need to get together to make what matters to them available. So there is usually a lot of infrastructure that needs to get into in place, and without an ML engineer onboarding to that complex infrastructure, we enable them to do their work. So it's a very easy pip install Metaflow. It's a lightweight API, gives you a whole world where you can, again, just focus on what matters for you, which is probably how can I make this model work better, perform better, and take the burden away from users, where they don't need to understand, okay, how can I request these resources, or what kind of infrastructure that needs to be in place, or how can I package this from a perspective of like dependency management is taking care of me. So this is this is what Metaflow is. And from a typical, like how your question on like how it fits to the typical
Right.
ML life cycle. So I think we'd already talked about like the simple terms, but maybe
Yeah.
we could expand a little bit more on like what that
Yes.
ML life cycle is. You probably like usually start with some notebook, right? You open it
Mhm.
up, you have a business problem at hand that you need to solve.
Yeah.
And then you have some data that you think could be helpful. So you probably start with some experimentation on like understanding the data, how I can, massage this data in a way that would, help me. So you essentially, prepare your data. And while you are preparing this data, you probably need to version your data. You probably need to scale your ETL. This is how Metaflow helps you. And you then probably go to the training phase, where you write your beautiful model. But in order to run that model, you need some compute, just like I was mentioning. You maybe do like hyperparameter tuning. So again, Metaflow gives you a really, really easy way of doing hyperparameter tuning. For example, we take care of, it's distributed across machines, whatever parameters that you would like to test. Again, we just give you, for example, there's a resource decorator. You just say, okay, I want these kind of resources, and then we make sure that you have access to those within, Netflix infrastructure. I think the evaluation and validation is, usually the next step, and I think Metaflow really helps you with that reproducibility. For example, we have cards at Cards Decorator at Metaflow that
Right.
helps you with, you run your flow, you get some results, and then you just don't need to like open up a Jupyter notebook or anything. It just shows you in the Metaflow UI, how your metrics are behaving, that you can again share with your product manager or other team members. And perhaps the meat of everything is the deployment of
Oh
your
yeah.
ML model.
Yeah.
And we have a solution called Metaflow Hosting, which is not open sourced. And Metaflow Functions is a very new and exciting feature that we are working on. Last March, when we had the Metaflow meetup, David and Fan actually talked about that. So if people are interested in learning more about Metaflow Functions, which we might open source, and they can learn more about that. But again, how can we make it easier for the ML scientists? Like, okay, this is how we package your model. It's how being deployed. Self-serve is, I think, like another thing I can think of for Metaflow, helping a lot with ML lifecycle, that you can actually do all of these things by yourself. Like you can deploy your models in with Metaflow hosting by yourselves without talking to any infrastructure team. And I guess the last thing is like, again, monitoring and iterating. So this is in the, especially when you go to production, and I'm very passionate about that topic, happy to talk more about that. But it really becomes a key point on, what are the metrics in each training job, what was the last successful run, etc. So throughout this process, Metaflow just, holds your hand and then tells you that, okay, I'm here for you.
That's so nice. Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think so. How has Netflix evolved? Like, how has Netflix evolved its ML infrastructure over time? And I know you explained the whole life cycle of Metaflow and how it helps. How does Metaflow play a role in making experimentation and deployment more developer friendly? I know you touched a little bit on deployment, but I would love to get to know more, like, how does it make developers' life easier?
Mhm. So, Sonam, I think my maybe not so interesting answer here is that you really need to advocate for the ML engineers within the company, because to me, this is where Metaflow helps the most. Like, this is the thing I'm really proud of the team. I should mention everyone here, by the way. Like, we are a team of 10 people working very hard on, making Metaflow the awesome tool that it is. The team is very, very focused on making sure the users are, at the end of the day, the ones like who should tell us, how these things should be used.
Mhm.
So I think one thing I would like to highlight, and maybe like this is useful for people who are working on these things or building these things, is that like advocating for ML engineers is actually like keeping them in your mind. The first thing, like even naming a decorator, right? Like naming a product
Right.
is actually gets quite important. But how it is evolving at Netflix, and since its inception, where I wasn't here, but I think it started way more with, okay, these are the people who have some, they are scientists. They are definitely not engineers, because at Netflix we have personas where they are, these unicorns where they are both engineers and scientists. But these are scientists that have these problems at hand, and they are not so tech savvy. And I think we started by helping, again, orchestration, training the jobs. How can we give you like some of the tools from like notebook to, deployment, right? I want to say, like, we don't have a magic wand where you say, okay, here is my notebook script that I, dumped everything in my head and now make this production ready. But
Right.
we try to give you the tools that would benefit you to like organize your workflow in a sense that like, okay, these are the things that I can stitch these things together step by step manner. But in terms of evolution, Sonam, I think the where we are, at least the problems that we have at Netflix today, where we are focusing more is more on the production side. So a lot of investment is going on where we can, not just give you the infrastructure, but when you deploy a model, how can you feel more confident that, when a new Metaflow version is released, it's not going to break your code, right?
Right.
Or how do I organize my CI/CD, which is, I know, is an overloaded term, could mean different for a lot of people. But how can I make sure that when I push something to production, the new code is picked up and like automatically deployed without me thinking about that? Or again, in terms of like incident management, before I push something, what are the checks and balances that I can do to understand that, okay, the new Metaflow version is not going to break things. This new other thing won't interject with my existing workflow. So these are the things that we are really heavily working on. And the last thing, again, maybe in this evolution, is that Netflix has internal teams and member-facing teams. So you can think of an internal team, for example, like working more on the content side, but a member-facing team where, like, when you go to netflix.com, you see some personalization, things are tailored towards you. So we have mostly focused on within Metaflow, where, the internal, we can empower internal teams, but now we are trying to expand to member scale, and what kind of problems we have over there, and how can we solve for the entire Netflix, not specific to some teams. And obviously scale becomes a problem, data becomes a much bigger problem.
Oh boy, yeah.
But
One can
these are
only
the,
imagine. Yeah.
yeah, so this is like how we see that, year by year Metaflow is evolving.
That's awesome. I love the whole evolution. Thanks for walking me through that. Now, looking ahead, what's on the horizon for Metaflow and machine learning tooling in general? Any trends that you've seen that you're excited about or maybe skeptical of?
Mhm. So, Sonam, I think we believe that I will use, LLMs and GenAI as the terms here. These things are coming, right? Like
Mhm.
we are seeing that in the industry. We see that need within Netflix itself. I'll refer again to the Metaflow meetup that we had last March.
Sure.
There was a really nice presentation by someone in the content team, where, like, how we create synopses for all the content that you see on Netflix, and like how we are with humans use LLMs. So these use cases are up and coming, but we believe the building blocks in order for you as a researcher to work on didn't necessarily change, right? Like, you still need data, you still need to train a model, you need to, like, fine tune the model. And in order to do that, you still need resources. So we believe Metaflow is very well positioned to
Mhm.
solve those things. Of course, we will evolve and we'll understand, like, what are the missing pieces. But we are thinking of that. We do have use cases that we need to support that are up and coming with the latest trends.
Mhm.
In terms of what I'm skeptical of, I wonder if things will change, like, in a
Blink of an eye.
heartbeat.
Yeah, yeah.
I think there will still be people who will write XGBoost models, and that will be very valuable for the business. Not just, I don't think it's just Netflix, but like
Mhm.
in industry in general. So I think, although I very much support on thinking that, okay, how can we make things better? I think there is also, I think what we had for many, many years that served us very well, I believe will still be around for, I don't know, for a while. We'll see.
Makes sense, makes sense. So okay, yeah, I was wondering, like, how do you think agents might try to make some space here in the Metaflow, or like will they affect the work on Metaflow in any way? Like, just not just agents, but in general, like you mentioned generative AI and all that. So just curious how you think about that.
Yeah. So I think it would be really cool if, I just go somewhere and then say, hey, I need to do this in
Right,
simple English. And
right,
then that thing creates your Metaflow flow and then deploys them and makes sure that they are up and running.
right.
So we are not working on making that possible. But I see a huge potential, again, in terms of onboarding, right? I was recently thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
What I always say is, onboarding a new engineer to a company is kind of an again underrated thing, right? Like making
Yeah.
someone productive in 2 weeks instead
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
6 months is really, really impactful. So if
Mm.
agents can play a role in making that happen, and I don't know, understand how much that person understands Metaflow, and depending on their understanding, gives more examples or tries to explain them even further, sounds quite awesome to me.
Yeah.
But again, it's in the horizon. It's not here.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand. Well, thank you so much. That's a wrap on today's episode. We explored a lot, like the why behind ML workflows, what makes the tools like Metaflow click for real world teams, and so much more. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And as always, being curious, keep experimenting. Thank you, Nurjan, for your time. Um,
My pleasure, Sanam. Thank you.